Hello everybody, my name is Troublemaker. Today we have another great wargame match, and this one will feature on the blue force side of things. Playing as the color blue, we have SirScorpion, Hartmann, Von Luck, and Bubba. And on the red side, the red 4 side, we have George S. Patton, Val, Force, Journey, Landhelm, and Inthy. Yes, let's see if we can find a unit name to actually get the full name here. That's Patton. Where are you for Journey areas? So here's a really crazy name. Forstiori Landhygisgalu Islands. It's a place. His name is actually a place. Probably a cluster of islands in Norway. I have no idea, actually. But with a name like that, who needs other names? SirScorpion is rolling around with a USA deck. This gives him access to some of those great American units, like the AH-64D Longbow, also the ATACMS, and the Patriot missile system. They're all very, very pricey units, but all very, very good for their cost. Hartmann is rolling around with a blue dragon deck, which is not very typical in the current metagame. However, this does give him access to a lot of really great, unique units. The Chumat, the Japanese anti-tank weapon, is very cheap and easy to deploy with very good accuracy values. The OH-1 Ninja is a really exceptional recon helicopter. And as well, the K-1, the Kiyomaru Shiki line, and the Nanayan Shiki C are all exceptional tanks that will do very, very well on the front line. Von Luck has a West German mechanized deck. This, of course, gives him access to ridiculous numbers of infantry. In particular, he has access to the Panzer Grenadier 90, which many consider to be very overpowered and very, very underpriced for the value that he gets out of it. And looks like his artillery choices will mostly be mortar, which fits very, very well with this infantry-heavy style. In this guy, he has the Tornado ECR for his seed, and he also has a decent number of air superiority fighters with very limited bomber options. Bubba has gone with the US deck, and unfortunately there's not too much variety in US decks. He's gone for roughly the same units with only very minor differences between the two. George S. Patton has a Soviet armored deck. This, of course, means lots and lots of tanks, and unusually he has gone for ridiculously high numbers of heavy tanks. If you look at everything to the right of this T-64BB, it's all heavies. This is a medium, and this is a light. This is going to be a either high loss situation or a high gain situation. Heavy tanks in giant numbers do very well, but in smaller numbers they're isolated and easily picked off. To help support them, he has double Buks and double Tunguskas. Val is using a generic Soviet deck. He has basically a pretty good balance between his infantry totals, his plane totals, and recon here. And worth noting, he's deployed the Spetsnaz Guru. This is a recon sniper that people enjoy using insanely aggressively. Also worth mentioning is that all the vehicles used with these infantry are actually very high quality and will be able to rumble with enemy vehicles very easily. This guy, whose name, as it ends up, doesn't mean anything at all, is rolling around with a generic Soviet deck. More than half of his lineup here is heavy tanks, and more than half of his support is also artillery. Worth noting, he does have the double Smirches, so he's probably going to be spamming a lot. He also has double FOBs, so he will probably be deploying a lot of freaking artillery. Inthy, sticking with the team, has a generic Soviet deck. And he also has one of the most powerful combinations in the game. The Ka-52 is an anti-radar helicopter. It can be compiled with the Ka-50 Akula for a very potent, powerful opener, or something that you can skirmish with mid-game. Favoring along with his team with a lot of heavy tanks and a lot of anti-air. As well, he has one Smirch of his own. So yes, we're on a 2v2 map playing with a 4v4. There are 3 flanks, of course, and so this means that by default, one side on each side should get pushed by at least 2 people. Now, if one side pushes with 3 into a side with 1, the side with 3 will guaranteed win. And given this map, it could actually be very, very advantageous. Following my mouse along, assuming the red will actually push, because that's generally how red play, they could push down through Echo, the hotel, and snipe Juliet. If they're playing against one person. If they're playing through this route against one person, they can get Juliet very, very easily. But you'll note on the long side, and we'll call it the long side, having 3 players come down here, the Delta into Golf, will allow them an extra 2 points per turn, but will not allow them to have that reinforcement point, which they can use to then snipe into Kilo. It's very long of a route, and there's just no opportunity to go for Kilo. So players, when distributing their assets, should really consider, if you're a blue 4 player or a red 4 player realistically, to have this bottom flank with 2 players. Even though it's only 1 point, it protects a massive, massive flank. Now, as the game does progress, of course, you'll want to engage these 2-point bases, because these 2-point bases are the money bases. Having just 1 player sit here with a defense will work out relatively well, because it's a very, very short distance from the reinforcement points. So if that 1 player gets overrun, everyone on the team could just throw in, like, 1 or 2 infantry squads, and suddenly it becomes very defensible. There's also air support, which is very, very close here. Here's the air range, and it can drop right off the bat. And you could also have some very close range mortars come in. The middle is a little bit wonky, and it's wonky because it comes in a 2-step progression. You will by default get your India and your Alpha for red and blue respectively. You will move into the town, and the town is a sieging point. So you might both try to grab Foxtrot. Let's say blue is able to secure and gets this place here. Well, now as red, you're in this town. So your 2-phase push is you take the town, or you take the zone, then you take the town, and now you're in a position to siege this town here. But having said that, the match has in fact begun, and we'll just pause really quickly to take note of how the players are playing. So on the bottom here we have Bubba and Hartmann, a 2-player push, mostly ground units, a few heavy tanks, including the Kiyomarushiki, which is an insanely potent tank, a very favorite close range, and some decent amounts of AA, including some radar-based ones. So going out for that early radar play. If there's an early seed playing, which can happen quite a bit, they can be very powerful in these particular situations. And on the bottom part here, we see a Buratino actually being brought out here. Very beefy old unit, pretty good for 140 points, the amount of ground that'll hit. And we have the islands, and we have Jofi, lots of infantry, not so much on the heavy tanks, mostly infantry here, but a few medium-sized tanks. On the northern front, we have 1 player, which is basically how it's going to be played, how it should play. Val's taking that position. And on the northern front, we have SirScorpion with a very bulky but cheap unit squad. And taking the middle, also a SirScorpion, actually. What? Where's Von Luck? Okay, so SirScorpion is taking both these points. Aha! Von Luck, Hartmann, and Bubba are doing a 3-player push along the bottom. This was discussed just now, and it's weird that this has actually worked out. Now, here's the thing. There's a Buratino here. Buratino is the ultimate in defensive capability. It is able to splash an area with so much napalm that giant clusters of units will be a problem. Actually, it looks like Hartmann will be peeling off into the middle, so there will be no 3-player push. We have a Phantom Bomber going to come in here and just try to block off access to the town to the main road. Not playing too aggressively. We have a few... oh, this is actually going to be the Buratino firing. Might be a miss. No, this is a pretty nasty hit, actually. And this is not Buratino fire, because it should be on fire. This is actually some other artillery. This is a Smirch. Getting some nice pot shots here. It's a little bit damage, but I don't think it actually made sense. And it looks like we'll be seeing a lot of infantry from infantry going to be able to take these towns, and just the bulk numbers here are going to hurt very heavily. Now, once this Buratino comes into play, this will be very devastating for blue, who have a lot of infantry that can be very vulnerable. These BTR 80As, by the way, are absolutely crazy snipers. They can deal with a lot of these vehicles pretty easily. The Martyr 1 might be able to counter it, but it's hard to say. And with these Spetsnaz coming in here, the Moskoya Paheta, they'll be able to deal with a lot of these units. And here comes the Buratino. This is kind of what we're talking about, the fear. And actually getting a really disgusting position here will wipe out most of these infantry units, and most of them will not fall into play. In fact, a lot of these anti-air units burning alive, which is rather weird. And this infantry push is just so freaking good. In the middle, we can see there's a lot of heavy tank line protecting here for Georgia as Patton, and a few infantry units protecting these woods, but no tanks to actually make it so they can push. So we might see a push here by Georgia as Patton. He might be able to actually push back in here, because infantry out in the open are very vulnerable. They can get hit by napalm, artillery, and there's not a ton of anti-air here, just the closed arrow, really. Looks like this bottom ground, however, will in fact go to our red 4 players who have successfully pushed in, and they've also gotten the early +1, which comes from where? Grabbing both 2-point bases, it seems, and yes, they will have in fact gotten a pretty big thing. MiG-27K coming in here to snipe at a heavy tank, and does it get away? 1 hit point. It will in fact somehow survive, so we'll see him again in 15 to 20 minutes once he regenerates. T-72B coming into a flanking position. Keep in mind, he's getting some side shots here, which means he's doing a lot of bonus damage he's otherwise not. The Abrams doing the correct choice, moving off to the side here. We have another bomb going to drop in here, smashes all of the infantry, and it's just a Leopard 2AI out in the open. And we have the Panzergrenadiers, the only defense left here. This tank push should not have any success rates. Oh my god, MiG-27K comes in and snipes a heavy tank, and looks like he's have to pull back everything. Now, if you're in this position, ladies and gentlemen, you have a Leopard 2A with 2 hit points, an MBT-70 with half hit points, CSs with a few hit points. You should sacrifice one of these units. Now, it shouldn't be the Leopard 2 because that is a 105-point unit. It shouldn't be the MBT-70 because that's a 60-point unit. It should be the CS, which is a 20-point unit. Have one unit sit back, cover the retreat so that they don't fall back with themselves, and then pull back these units to get some heals. Now, he did salvage the Roland 3, which is excellent. And he's bringing in more infantry, but unfortunately those infantry will not be able to stage an assault for a while. On the downside, he doesn't actually have a tank in position right here to stop enemy engagements across this line here. So very problematic situation here for NATO. In this position here, you can see that Georgia's Patton is in fact engaging with these T-72BUs against the infantry at a decent range. Actually, the HMV is what he's going for. It won't be very long before they can just cluster bomb this area and take it out. In the north, it's actually going to be a stalemate, mostly because that's how the north always works out. There is a Spetsnaz GRU here, and of course they are a sniper, so they can pick off some infantry and be very, very aggressive with them. But for the most part, that position looks like it's going to sit for now. In the meantime, a huge problem here for Blue 4, as they're going to have to come up with a nice tactic. And Mozo Strelkis being gracefully moved to the front, they're going to be able to knife off a lot of these infantry before they can come into play. And looks like just not enough infantry actually to the front, but there is the BMP 1D over here. It's going to be able to wipe out a lot of these vehicles, and smoked. Motor struck him, pulled back just in time. 1 hit point left on him, full veterancy. He's got to keep pulling this back though. One great veterancy strategy is to get higher vetted infantry, pull them back, and then you have invincible infantry as you restock them with supplies. And look at that crazy pullback. Spetsnaz, a line of fire here, and this is going to slow things down just a little bit. The Spetsnaz are completely surrounded here. There's a Moskoya Pehota, which could need to get pulled back soon, just so we can have some supplies. And this Spetsnaz napalm over here, of course, is almost out. They have a couple more shots left. They're just basically trying to walk around to try and figure out angles and locations that they can hit. Now, the BMP 1D does in fact have these frag grenades, and is actually using the fire position command to spray this area with them and try and bring down these numbers. If he can continue doing this, he could easily take a lot of this out. And look at these riflemen have been brought down to basically nothing with a little bit of artillery, some frag grenades, and a few infantry. And I don't see any Urals coming in here just yet. He does need to resupply them. It's not just your artillery that needs to be resupplied. You need to resupply those infantry too, because keeping strong infantry can hold these towns. And you need these strong infantry to really buffer back all this stuff. And Von Luck is unfortunately doing something that's rather silly. He's continuing to push forward with his infantry. He actually needs to get some tanks, some smoke, some mortars to try and take this area here. And unfortunately, it looks like none of these infantry will make it to the day. There are some infantry in play, but just not really enough. In the middle location here, good note that we have some artillery fire trying to hit a random location. He's just trying to clear out these woods locations here to try and clear out possible anti-air nests. Still nothing really happening on the northern front. And worth noting, there's actually no command right now on Hotel, so he's been bleeding out quite a bit. He's got himself a 100-point lead, and here comes a Tornado IOS. Now, micro is very important here, and you can kind of see the path of the bomb as it's dropping. See, here they are. And, you know, from this pathing, when you're looking at them closely, keep in mind, you can clearly say they're going for the Spetsnaz GRU. So the Spetsnaz GRU actually is the one that needs to get pulled. One thing that I miss that's not really modding in the game is really the ability to mod some of these bombs so that you can make them look a lot clearer. In that particular case, those bombs are a little bit harder to spot, but, you know, he still should have microed them backwards regardless. That probably isn't enough to get him back into this game. He's probably going to have to do a little bit more. And this BMP 1D has been getting, now, heat rounds. High explosive anti-tank rounds. He's running into frag rounds. He's actually using his anti-tank round to jimmy down some riflemen. And looks like with bulk numbers here, he's able to push back. But the costs here were insanely high, and he's definitely going to pay back much later on. Worth noting that we have more infantry coming in here from these BMP 1Ds. And as these numbers go down, we're going to eventually see... whoa! Phantom getting some infrared shots off as well. We're going to eventually see that he's going to run out of infantry, and we're going to see a pretty big switch up here. And really weird location for the napalm. Now, in his defense, this will block vision for these tanks, because napalm also acts as smoke. I know! Exciting, right? So in that particular situation, this could work out a little bit. Now, the T-80U is going to run through the fire, which is not going to do a ton of damage, and he's going to try and reposition himself to help joining on this fight. Now, the Spetsnaz are completely out of their napalm rounds, and this area is actually desperately in need of supplies. It's only 10 to 15 points to get in a U-roll, and unfortunately right now he's just resupplying the wrong units. He's bringing in new, fresh units, and he's pulling back these weakened ones, fair enough, but he needs to get in those supplies, get those numbers up, and get up that very important ammunition. So, once he can get these supplies, he can restock some of these infantry, but in the meantime, he's bringing in a lot of new infantry, and these BTR ADAs. And the BTR ADAs will most definitely be helping with the cause. They'll be able to axe out a lot of vehicles in their kills. Looking on the middle side here, worth noting there has been a giant spray that has brought down large chunks of numbers here. And now the T-80U and the T-72BU, and by the way, the T-72BU is actually a T-90. It's just a quirk of history. And, ooh, bad shot here. Fun fact about these kind of tanks, you should probably turn off your rockets unless you're going to get a guaranteed shot. And now with the Sappery moving in, keep in mind, Sapperies don't really have any weapons to deal with vehicles. They can wipe out a large number of infantry here, and if they get the tanks supporting them appropriately, these HMVs will not live to fight the day. And K1s actually will, looks like, take some shots here, and this will easily work to be a, and this is what I'm talking about, you got to turn off those rockets, come on. Rockets are for long-range fire, and if you can't keep a consistent view, they should probably be turned off. Now, in this case, it looks like he's keeping them on just so that he can, you know, get a little bit of extra damage. But in the, it only ever appears so, and they're, yeah, just not getting that consistent shot here. And he's actually wiped out everything in this jungle here except for the K1, the single K1. And that won't last too much longer. He can actually get some infantry in to clear that out. By the way, update, town completely cleared of blue infantry, and now we see some red carriers moving up into this zone here. And, you know, they're going to be able to gain a decent chunk of forest here. Up until this point, this is what I was talking about, we've been having forces only dumping into this town. There has been no support troops along these edges, so this is going to be a very significant move up. And he reads the play, and he's in fact moving up some Moto Stremikis and some BMP 1Ds into the zone here. And, God, these Smirches are so bloody brilliant, hitting one target down with 1,000,000 shots and losing a lot of supply for it. Yeah, that's, like, it's not, it doesn't do as much damage as it should, hypothetically, but it angers people so much. And now we have some BTR 80A just kind of moving in here, getting a little bit of scouting data. And these are, you know, fairly expensive scouts at 25 points, but they will get enough data. We'll see here that we have, you know, 2 infantry squads. He probably saw the tank, probably saw the carrier, and might see a few more vehicles. And Motostruck, he's moving across open field. Might be able to make it, actually. Looks like he's close line of sight, and will be able to get in the jungle. Now, keep in mind, there's actually just too much in this jungle right now for him to actually be able to get this. But if he can get that Abrams, that would be devastating. There's a fire first mechanic that gives a huge benefit to being an infantry in these sort of matchups. But at the same time, infantry are also very vulnerable to morale damage. You can see he's currently shaken, so this could have huge effects on him. Abrams comes in, first fire mechanic goes in favor of the infantry, as per usual, and panicked right off the bat. Missed on his first shot. So should get gunned down relatively easy. Yeah, stunned. That's what I'm talking about. There's always a chance, though. There's always a chance in these sorts of games. It's kind of like when the helicopter crashes on your own infantry. I mean, there's a chance of that happening. It's not very likely, but there's a chance. So we've kind of drawn borders here in which things don't look particularly good for our blue 4 players, but in the meta, the game design of Wargame, Pact is actually supposed to get the forward position. All the units of Blue 4 are more or less designed around pushing in and taking zones, aggressive play. So in any kind of position where Red 4 is unable to take a push, it's almost akin to them having to leave the game because it becomes very, very difficult for them to come back. Now, small micro-wing choice here by our Islands friend here, and this is very smart. Instead of bringing supplies to the Buratino, bring the Buratino back to the supplies. The Buratino has a very long reload rate, very long firing rate, very long recharge rate, and uses a retarded number of supplies. So if you're in this choice where you have to, resupply your Buratino, just bring them back to the FOBs. They will do the work. And a lot of people just sit their smirches around the FOBs as well, because same kind of situation. They use a lot of supplies, and they deal a lot of damage. But having said that, we are seeing very little supplies going to the front line here. And this is the front. This is the place that should be getting all the supplies. Nothing here. A few trucks here could resupply the PTURS Conquers, give them some SALH or Saclos type, rockets to deal with some of these tank fires, and a Leopard 2 coming in here might be able to get a nice bit of few shots. Most of these are medium tanks, and these are the kind of tanks that your heavy tanks are actually really good at dealing with. And yeah, half hit point left on him. The Leopard 2 actually takes a bad shot and will move back. And yeah, looks like both of them might actually have to push back momentarily. The Abrams is staying super sneaky, and it's not really revealing itself. Gets a decent amount of damage off, no kills unfortunately. We could see a Leopard 2A1 get cleaned up by just nuclear bombs of some sort. And the Spetsnaz actually getting some snipes off the Spetsnaz Golu as units try to push these towns. And you're probably wondering, why was no infantry units here? And the reason is because you want to lure people in. And once people come in, you want to move them up. Now, once they've taken too much damage, you want to pull them back. These are very, very bad support type places. And Gareth moved back these PTR Conquerors back to a better supporting position, because right now they're getting wiped out by Yaggers. Yaggers able to somehow successfully get in. Kind of shocking, actually. But they shouldn't last too long. The number of Mascoria Pehota, which are kind of reservists and not that good, should bat them back. I mean, there's 30 here, 30 here. You know, there's tons of Morskaya Pohetas who can be pulled in to deal with this. And we have some riflemen and some tanks coming across for a big push. Looks like all the tanks are being pulled back here by Infi. Doesn't want to engage these tanks because these are all Abrams. Abrams are kind of the king of tanks. I mean, really the king of tanks is the King Tiger, of course, but this was World War II. And in modern warfare, the king of the tanks is the American Abrams. It's very, very highly capable, highly armored, and can deal with a lot of threats. And oh my god, this is just not fun to watch when you're seeing all your forces getting completely hammered by ridiculous amounts of artillery. Now, I'm pretty sure this must be cluster shells from a Smirch, because as you can see, they're doing little to no damage to the infantry. These are anti-vehicle units, or anti-vehicle attacks. And so far, so good. Is this some counter-artillery we're seeing here? Looks that would be the case. This is actually mortars I was using, and the counter-artillery will be stunning, but not successful. Yeah, not successful. Looks like they will, in fact, pull out just in time. And Yeah, we have 19 Panzer Grenadiers. Those original Jagers are actually somehow still alive. We might just see a napalm plane come in relatively soon to try and deal with this. Or perhaps even that Buratino might get moved up. How is his restocking going? It looks like he's fully restocked. And Buratinos are very, very short range. I mean, they literally have to throw over the distance of this town to get to the town. It's absolutely crazy. And Blue was successful in actually getting a field here. Now keep in mind, like I said, these Mascoria Pejotes are actually reservists. So in order for these guys to be advantageous, you have to attack with giant, boisterous amounts of numbers against smaller numbers. And actually more infantry getting rallied in here as the quality battle is currently being won by NATO. Like I said, they have very, very good units for pushing, and these Panzer Grenadiers are definitely it. They have insanely good fire against infantry, as well they do very good against tanks. Jager opening in open ground, this means that he loses the plus bonus damage, and Thunderbolt, oh my god, why are you doing this, Thunderbolt? Looks like it'll successfully get away. Yep, what was I saying? Yes, Panzer Grenadiers can do very, very well against infantry, but they also have a very significantly powerful anti-tank weapon. So they can deal with almost any threats that come on the ground. Obviously, they can't hit the ground. Prowler are going to come up here and wipe out a anti-air raider guided system. And worth noting, in the middle flank here, we can see that Patton has in fact moved up, has in fact taken this force, and he has Motostronikis and Saparis here. His line of T-90s and T-80s are coming up here, but looks like they'll quickly pull back because the number of Kiyomaru Shikis here is just so strong. As well, we have Chumat support, and the Chumat is the very potent South Korean, or is it Japanese? Yeah, I knew it was South Korean. South Korean anti-tank team. And here's the bombs we're talking about. All those infantry just thwarted. Now the Abrams is going to have to push back. He was going to pull up and try and pick off like probably his Conkers. But looks like he's going to pull away. Phantom's coming up here. And the Phantom goes down. Last minute goes down. He will get the napalm off though. Looks like the Mascora Pejota might bite the bullet. 4 hit points left on him. And lots of forces in here for George's Patton successfully and significantly capturing this 1 point zone. This is the conquest zone, a lot of times it's called. If there's one zone in the map, they call it the conquest zone. And it looks like Hartmann's actually pulling out of this match. This will give more resources to his 3 teammates if they decide to stay. Not exactly sure why he's leading the match, but Prowler, go down. Prowlers are a hard thing to lose. And look how fast George's Patton was. He got 1 hit on this Book MI. And it's one of his books from the radar device, and immediately he turned off his anti-radar, which caused the second shot to actually miss. If an anti-radar round is in the air and you choose to turn off your radar before it hits, it actually will scurve off and go in a random direction, and it gives you a high chance of surviving. And this might be a last push here for the PLF, the People's Liberation Front, because they are running out of units here, running out of players, really. The tanks have moved up. MiG-27, this is the big fear, the MiG-27 coming up, and second MiG-27 coming in here as well. That is shocking, and more shocking. And looks like a Prowler coming in to pick off an anti-air round. MiG-27K still in the air. He can get another tank kill. He just killed a whole line of tanks basically with those. And these mortars, although not terribly effective against tanks, bring down the morale heavily. So they become very weak in tank versus tank battles. And that's what's happening here. George's Pat with that T-80UM coming in on the southern flank and pushing and getting the kill. T-80UMs are sick baller tanks. Heavy Hog coming in here with some ridiculously awesome rocket fire here to try and wipe out some of these infantry numbers. And still, the weakness of play for this WTF team has been the fact that these infantry have not been resupplied. I mean, look at how low on health some of these guys are. These are high-vetted infantry. They would become invincible if they applied the tactic appropriately. Mortar fire, going to fire on a random location with this MBT. And once again, not terribly effective, but it will do stuns. It will hit morale damage. And along with the support of, I guess that's a Smirch. Yeah, lots of Smirches. He was able to actually kill that before it was able to return. So running out of infantry here, we have the U.S. Marines being pulled up pretty much for the first time in this game. And a WTF, and I should have mentioned this before, this is PLF, this is WTF. WTF really needs to kind of get in there with or not WTF, PLF needs to get in there with a new strategy in play. Oh my god. That was definitely not the worth loss of that plane, but that is devastating to see. They need to hit a new angle. It looks like their plan will be to hit the southern flank. Now, as always, in this particular type of matchup, the northern flank is relatively undefended. A giant push towards the north can be absolutely devastating. By the way, score update right now, we're at 425 out of 750. We'll soon be approaching that 70% of the match moment, and that is a very golden moment. The V-150 is coming up here, presumably with the U.S. Marines. Now, a lot of people... Oh, Delta Force, my bad. I was going to say, a lot of people like using the U.S. Marines with the Humvees, because Humvees have very, very powerful cannons on them, and they're very armored and very useful compared to most transports. And this last bit of push here might do more damage than it should. And it should not do this much damage because a lot of these units are very, very low in supplies. And notice the pattern of the fire here. There's a napalm that blocks off this Spetsnaz and this Spetsnaz from engaging this Delta Force. So now this Delta Force and this U.S. Marine can completely encircle this Moskoya Pehota, and the Spetsnaz. I'm saying Pehota because there's actually a K in there. Pehota. Now, if there's someone out there with an actual pronunciation of how you actually pronounce Morskaya Pehota, is it the K soft? Is it a soft K like knuckle? I don't know. You can go ahead and tell me. It's not rude at all. A lot of people think that's rude when they correct my pronunciations of particular words, but it's not rude at all. My time in the Army was very, very limited. Very limited. Did not join International Task Force by any means. The war in Iraq had not even remotely happened. Speaking of which, the V-150 is coming here, unloading those awesome Delta Forces. Most famous, of course, for Black Hawk Down. You all know it. And we also have some infantry coming in, getting gunned down by these Spetsnaz. And without that ring of fire here, this is going to allow for these Spetsnaz squads to actually get involved. We're seeing 8 squads being deployed here in the NTLBVE. These could be more Spetsnaz, perhaps. And just an unfortunate UI option never actually allows you to see what's actually being rallied in. And it looks like the bulk of the action will be happening on the southern front. As with a one-player missing advantage, there's enough income for them to actually significantly push aside. Now, I'm not saying that this is done on purpose. I think Hartmann might have left for other reasons, but it has allowed them to push the town. And once you gain control of these towns, it allows you to, as our Red 4 players have been doing, scale anti-tank weapons along the edges of these towns to attack into these wooded areas, which makes tanks much less effective. Now, the difference here between our Blue 4 players and our Red 4 players was that when Red 4 was in this position before, when they were scaling in with lots of infantry and pushing out, there was no defenses available for Blue 4 on their base. It was very easy for them to push in. In this particular instance, not the case. There's actually a giant ring of insanely potent tanks camping at every single jungle available. There's lots of planes, mortar, Bertino, Smirches, all sort of great defensive potent options that can be used against any kind of ambush. And that's why this push is destined to fail. A lot of times when people, they have their beginning game tactic, like, I'm really going to push this one side. By the way, T-80U getting knifed down by, I'm assuming ATACMS? Yeah, that's the case. They only get 2 shots, but dear God, they're powerful. People kind of like look and they say, like, I'm going to keep pushing this flank over and over and over and over until it works. And in this particular case, it's not going to work. It will probably never, ever work. And when you look to the northern flank, that's a really good place to push right now. There's no defenses there. They could easily load up a lot of tanks and just push on in and cut out a +2 advantage. And this is basically going back to what I said at the beginning of the game. This route here, this short route here, is important because if you lose this base, you can also lose your reinforced point. You can also get flanked around this 2-point base here. It's a very important base to hold. However, later in the game, this base ought to become more important, and more units should be flooding towards this because these are 2-point bases. These are the value bases, and that's unfortunately something that has not happened for PLF. Realistically, they should have just tried to defend off this position with light defenses, not pushes, light defenses, and then go for that northern area. Has not happened. They've stayed pretty consistent, choosing to go to this infantry battle, and it looks like it's the one thing that will really crush them in the game. And it looks like we're going to see a lot more Smirch fire going into these
forested, jungly areas, trying to hit whatever they can. Basically, anti-air units. The Patriot is the big fear, of course. Prowler, double Prowler, actually, are going to try and come in here and wipe out some units. There is an Igla in position here to try and scare them off. It's a very close range anti-air unit, but once it gets some shots off, it can be pretty nasty. And for newer players to the game, anti-air types basically come in two types. There's a third type, but it's not actually worth talking about. There's the infrared system, and there's the radar system. The radar system can be tracked using these SEED, something air defense system. Anyway, SEED planes are anti-radar planes, and they can, without even seeing the radar plane, kill them. These infrareds, however, cannot. However, the infrareds lose damage. They don't do as much damage as radar. And the reason is because all planes have countermeasures. And because all planes have countermeasures, and countermeasures are deployed against infrared, it means infrareds have a lower accuracy and damage count compared to radar, which are highly, highly accurate and high damaging, and also very high range. So mixing and matching the two types is very important for dealing with those SEED planes. Whereas you want more radar planes to deal with the bombers and the air superiority fighters, but you want more infrareds to deal with those SEED planes as SEED planes become more available. And look how bolsterous he's being with these Humvees, just rushing right into the middle of giant amounts of infantry, and still able to actually move up quite a bit. Now with these mortar fires coming in here, actually able to stun these Abrams in place, and we're seeing the TO-62. I have not seen this unit in so long. In air-land battle, the TO-55 and the TO-62 were basically like the bee's knees as far as like tanks go or vehicles go. They were this really cool napalm vehicle, and you used them out of range of the unit you were attacking to kill them, and it was actually awesome. I believe we just saw a Phantom 2 bomb get dropped there. And just to see, it's cool. Wasn't very effective, obviously, because the metagame is very, very changed in this, to the point where no one at all ever uses this. And so we're seeing a shock and awe type strategy. This is a very American approach in terms of American tactics. You want to shock and awe your opponent so that he's frightened, with lots of bombs, lots of fire, and lots of lights. And then, when his morale is down, he'll just surrender to you. Now, of course, in Wargame, that doesn't actually work, because this is total war. This is endgame war. This is the Russians winning or the Americans winning, or I guess the Chinese as well. The Chinese and the Russians winning, or the Americans and the giant network of allies, which is highly unrealistic. And so now we have George S. Patton's team, the WTF, actually successfully getting to the 70% marker, and there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that they have this. I saw a longbow out here, but generally by this point you tend to see a lot more NATO airplay. In this particular case, it looks like they've gone for a lot of artillery and a lot of infantry, just trying to crush the town. And unfortunately, this will not be a winning strategy. There's absolutely no way. Income in the game is accrued at a rate of roughly 1 point every 3 seconds. So in a minute, you'll get 20 points. Yeah, that's right. And so this will be over in, roughly 21 minutes, give or take, depending on whether there's surrenders or not after this giant attack. The Leopard 2A1 getting chased out by the T-72BU, the T-64B, the T-72B, T-74B, T-72B. I confused myself there. And, looks like some of these will survive. Actually, both will probably survive. There's a lot of range kiting that tends to happen at these levels. You try and push people in, and then make them right-click is the goal. Make them right-click on your tank. And when they've right-clicked enough, you can come in and reverse command, which is basically to change your front so that you're showing your front armor as you're reversing, so that your tank fire doesn't do significant amounts of damage. And looking at the giant picture here, very, very massive picture, there are absolutely no mobilizations at all on any other front right now. This is endgame. This is it. And really, WTF have actually won already, because even if this base is lost, there is still not enough time for them to gain what would end up being 2 points, a +2. The reason why it would be a +2 is because in this particular situation, they would put their own command here, which would be would be 0 for this base not being occupied, and +1 for their own base being occupied. So that's a +2 situation. Cobra is being fired here, lost 1 already, trying to knife down as many of these heavy tanks. And the heavy tank number count actually has gotten really big. Heavy tanks can get very, very nasty. These helicopters basically being sacrificed to try and injure them. T-80UM with 1 hit point again. This is a hero T-80UM. This is probably the second point in this game where that single T-80U has been at 1 hit point. And having these Cobras in play also drives back the tanks, which are basically supporting the infantry, gunning down a lot of the enemy infantry, and also taking care of all their vehicles. And with that extra amount of damage lost, this is going to allow for Blue to basically full-on secure this location. Now the Fallscream Yager, rather interesting unit because it has a fairly high range on fire here, and it can actually get these VDVs in the distance here. But yeah, like, are we seeing the Bertino? Oh yeah. So here's the fire burning on the dance floor of infantry here, and it slows things down. It's got a big thing. It creates a donut shape. So this town here is the only thing safe in this donut. It creates a donut in which the thing in the middle can't fire, and anything along the edges has to move somewhere else. So it stalls attacks. It's been strategically placed along major roadways so that any new units that come in can't actually get into towns. And as a delay tactic, it's working quite well. Now we have some IL-102 bombers along with an Su-24 and a MiG-25 BM also, all coming in for some awesome bombing action just to kind of clear this place out of any sort of fire. And also going for these weird back jungles, which have had no units in them the whole game. And clearly they want to get rid of this Fulong's group, which is an infantry command, because that would allow them to neutralize this point and gain a +2 advantage. Yeah, the number of infantry here for Blue has been severely diminished, but there's no new infantry coming up for Red to replace these numbers. So yeah, looks like he's going to have to get that Bertino back, have him fire, and looks like just relying on artillery right now. The artillery will weaken them down quite a bit. Looks like U.S. Marines are going to get some anti-tank fire on this NT-LBV, but not a single successful shot. Oh my god, the U.S. Marine picked up by a... look at this! Okay, so this is kind of crazy, because generally speaking, these squads, and you always know in the infantry, they have these little goggles on, you know? Can you see the goggles? They always have their little goggles on, right here, some goggles. These are recon units. These are units that you are using to just spot. And you spread them around the map in funny places to spot places. And notice the southern flank here has spotted by helicopters. These are being hyper-aggressive. These are snipers, the Spetsnaz group. And he's using these to try and pick off units with his range. And so he's going to come in, hopefully test range, and then hopefully move back. And actually with the artillery support here, he's probably going to be able to get rid of these light riflemen. And also these Spetsnaz GRU have another big advantage to them, and that's that they're sneaky. They have really good stealth numbers, which means that they are able to hide very effectively. And yeah, actually going to be able to gun down these light riflemen with 4 Spetsnaz GRUs. That's just really wonky and really weird. Something I should mention about the southern flank, and there is a reason why both players have a lot of recon covering it. In beta, which was almost a year ago now, there was this kind of tactic where you take tanks and anti-air vehicles and infantry and just go through this line here or through this desert, and you can see there's actually a lift to go through here, and you go along into here and you go right into the enemy's base. It was a long route in which you have to bring a supply truck in order to do it, and people were doing it. Because no one knew better. No one understood the maps. And now, as a kind of a hand down from that day, mortaring his own units, by the way. Ooh, so sloppy. Bad communications here by George Patton and Islands. Pulling back his spore, which are now hurt. Yeah, people don't do this anymore because, one, you have to have it done to you to do it. It's one of those kind of things. How the game generally works. And two, everyone watches for it just by default. There's almost no logical reason to invest a lot of recon down here because nobody does anything there. It's also a good place, by the way, to have a helicopter attack because this mountain obscures vision of anti-air. So yeah, it does have some strategic use, but almost nobody who plays competitive actually takes advantage of that. By the way, KA-50 Akula is a baller As far as the helicopters go, kills off an Abrams, which once again, as I said, the king tank, the greatest tank ever made. And yeah, it looks like with the number of Spetsnaz, the amount of mortars, napalm, this zone has been successfully captured, and the Spetsnaz crew are returning back to get healed up as conquering heroes. And Spetsnaz jumping on top of light riflemen, and this is an interesting choice. And because napalm will hit the ground, so by doing that, he's actually doing damage to himself. So yeah, now, oh, look at that. Randomly killed off the command that was sitting right here. So that's a +2 right now. So this game might actually end less than 20 minutes, but not much more less. And basically running out of units, running out of options. We have a lineup of these Weasel 1 MK20. Why is this unit special, you ask? Why is the Weasel so special? It's because the Weasel is actually the first DLC unit that was ever introduced into the Wargame series. It was the final, and I think the only DLC for Wargame European Escalations. I think every other DLC for Wargame European Escalations, I think all the DLC was actually maps, and then this one patch came out that introduced some new units, and the Weasel was the first. It was the first ever introduced, and it's a small unit, a very unimportant unit, but it's the first, which makes it very important. And it was also featured in the European Escalations campaign. So basically, anyone who played the DLC campaign, which, you know, was cool at the time, really cool, got the unit for free. KA-52 and KA-50 Akula. So this is a huge power combination, by the way, these two planes. And it's a big power combination for introductory games because you can use the anti-radar to wipe out the 2 radar planes, and your Akulas can wipe out lots of tanks and vehicles and other air systems. And it's very expensive as an opener. I'd say 300 points. Am I wrong here? 130 and 150. So about, yeah, 280 points as an opener. But it can be absolutely devastating. Can wipe out a lot of radar systems and allow you to have a big air supremacy strategy. Now, with the points being as low as they are right now, or high as they are, I should say, we're seeing a tank push coming in here with Val and George S. Patton, and they're going to try and pick off all these tanks here. And a lot of these are very, very weak right now. So if any of them actually reveal themselves, they're in a lot of trouble. Now, there is a first shot advantage that can happen, and looks like in both cases it goes off to the Soviet side. Now, there's a Leopard 2 full health in here. The T-64 is going to move in, and he should lose a few T-64s to this. 1 total, looks like. And the KA-52 is going to fly overhead, and this is a nasty unit. And a T-72KI. This is what I call the get out attack. He didn't just rally in a tank, a command tank. He rallied a command tank out in the open for everyone to see. So he's very heavily invested in taking that. And here comes a Weasel autocannon, which used to be a part of this a build that used to be called the Cult of the Autocannon, which basically vanished. The autocannon used to be very powerful. It's very good at wiping out light tanks and medium tanks. Not so hot against those heavies. And that's actually what we have going on right here, is a lot of heavies, except for this BMP-3, which is basically a light tank coming in here. And that should get happily destroyed by the Weasels if there wasn't so many freaking tanks. 2 of them getting destroyed off the bat. BTR-80 coming in here. Yeah, this Weasel marches over. And there's also the modular VTS-I, which I believe is the first or the second unit in the European Escalation campaign that you ever get access to. And it was, for a long time, the most powerful unit in the game. Now, not so much. Now it's kind of a wink to the past, if you will. And with these infantry coming up, they should be able to get some side shots coming in here to wipe this out. T-64 B, moving in to fight these out. Gets 1 solid shot wiping out one of those Moto Strelki squads. And that should be all for naught. The tank is coming in here eventually. Yes, here it is. Might not actually come in time, though. Worth noting, there's 2 commands here now, and they're basically in the same location. So there could be a good 2-4 deal here. And lots of Avengers. These are your infrareds. And like I said before, when you have these anti-radar weapons, in which case the weapon here is anti-radar. And this is the only anti-radar helicopter in the game, by the way. When you have these anti-radar weapons, you want to bring in these infrareds. And when you have lots of infrareds on the enemy side, you want to just kind of wipe them out with lots of units. And oh my god, Spetsnaz behind enemy lines does spot the Fulong's group. And keep in mind, these two are together. Does he see both? It must be known. Does he see both? He sees, actually, he sees the vehicle, but he doesn't see the squad. That is interesting. So we could see a barrage coming very soon from empty smirches. Oh my god, not a single available smirch for this. Abrams coming into the jungle against T-64 Moto Shogi support, and that is weird. Also very pushed away. See, here's the thing. I thought that this infantry squad would have been the one spotted, so that's why he's moving. He's the infantry squad. But that was not the one that was actually spotted. And now here comes the mortars hitting where the infantry were, possibly also where the command is as well. And no, this is mortars. This is actually a smirch. And the reason why I know this is a smirch because it's having little to no effect on the infantry squad. Now, if that killed, we have our 750 points, and that gives a victory to the WTF clan. I believe this is the WTF clan. They look very WTF-ish to me. Yep, PLF handed a pretty steep defeat here. Hartmann obviously pulling out, wasn't performing particularly well. Von Luck and El Bubba clearly were the guys in the bottom, and SirScorpion was playing the supporting game by playing on the top and the middle. Their tactic did unfortunately not work out for them. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for watching. My name is Troublemaker. I'll see you guys next week for another Wargame match.
We'll be right back.